Okay, hi guys. Welcome to another week of RK Originals. And this week we are at number 82. I mean, this week's a little special. We'll be speaking with specially featured guests, which we'll know a little bit on. So again, shout out to Shopee for providing us the equipment and Engineer Shift for providing us guidance. So our COC, please do not record our live streaming. Please do not post advertisement in the live chat, and please say nice things to each other. So if you have something to share about, do visit this link and drop us a message. And now for the main event, today's topic will be a topic about the Coding Career Handbook. It's a book that was recently published by Shawn. And today we'll have Shawn as a guest coming in and speak with us, actually more of like speaking with Lee Hao. So without any further ado, please welcome Lee Hao and Shawn.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hello, Shawn. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
So, yeah, hi, everyone. I'm Lee Hao. I'm in the office right now. That's why I have to wear a mask. And with me, Shawn. Shawn, I think better known as Swix on the internet, is a close friend of RK. And he just recently launched the Coding Career Handbook. So, welcome, Shawn.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's nice to join this meetup once more. I've been watching quite a few meetups, and so now it's weird to be as a guest.
So, Shawn, like you have a very interesting career from my point of view. So I think for the benefit for those who don't know about yourself, maybe would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Shawn. I'm originally from Singapore. I guess the Singapore story is that I went to university in the US, and I had my career in finance before for 6 years before deciding to change careers. And I went to a boot camp in New York. And for the past 2 years, I've been a developer at a few places. First Two Sigma, then Netlify, and I just joined AWS this year. And yeah, and then in between jobs, I decided to write down some principles and just like good ideas that I've heard from a lot of different people. So that's what has been this collection of essays that's become a book. But I've been sort of writing for a long time online.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Shawn has a blog that writes a lot of interesting articles. So Shawn, would you like to share with us about what is in your book, and why do you write this book, and what is it about?
Yeah, sure. The idea is that there's a lot of advice covering technical interviewing. So like cracking the coding interview was sort of like the main inspiration, at least for a lot of people getting jobs. But after you get the job, after you pass the interview, then actually the majority of your time, there's basically nothing about how to, I guess, learn faster and sort of all the non-technical parts of a coding career. So essentially, I think that's where I had a lot of thoughts just from observing and listening to other people. Even doing simple things like, what if every company has a career ladder that helps you to determine where you go from junior to senior to staff to principal, or whatever your designation is. And you notice that there are all these patterns if you study. So I have a list of like 20 something career ladders that I went through, and you notice that actually only one out of four, like 25% of the criteria is actually about coding. The rest is like communication, influence, business impact, understanding the how to work with others in your team, being able to mentor others in your team, being able to make decisions that are not strictly to do with coding, but broader architecture and business related goals. So that's, I guess, I thought I saw a hole in the market, essentially, especially when it comes to junior to senior. I think that is the key gap that I don't see really anyone else really talking about. So that's kind of where I focused in. And then the other thing was, I guess, because my previous career was in finance and econ, and I think a lot of developers don't really understand how money is made from their software. So I started writing about strategy stuff as well in the book. So there's this, it's basically like, everything I think developers should know about their shaping their career, beyond just like what the particular language. Because I think, you can pick up a lot of like API skills, like language skills, but once you sort of are comfortable with that, there's the stuff that really lasts is the stuff that is everything beyond that. So I'm pretty interested in the stuff that lasts and scales for multiple years and decades.
Yeah, so for those who haven't looked at the book or doesn't know about the book, right? I think one thing I find interesting about the book itself is that when I read the book, I realize it's structured in like, I guess, 3 to 4 sections, right? So you start from junior to senior, and senior and beyond. And so like, what are the advisors? Like, you gave good advisors on like how we can step up from junior, senior, and beyond, as well as you covered on like principles and strategies, right? As well as some tactics that we can use in certain circumstances, right? So in the part, like in the first section of the book, you give like, so I think a lot of us over here, like some of us over here are like junior developers where we like just graduated from universities, or we just like career switchers, right? We switch from some other sector to as a developer. So do you like, what are like good advices that you would give to like junior developers out there?
There's so much, which is pretty unusual for me, because I think usually like my entire philosophy can be summed up in 3 words, which is learn in public. And I think that that's the fastest way to learn, to grow your career, to build your skills at the same time. And I think that's pretty important for juniors and seniors as well. Like to me, like the title is a bit arbitrary, because everyone is junior in some things, everyone is senior in other things. There's no such thing that says a senior engineer knows 100% more than a junior engineer, and there's nothing that a junior engineer can teach a senior engineer. That's probably not true. I experienced it myself in my first job, where I basically found out my boss didn't know React, and I was teaching him a lot of things. But so I think it's we should not be that attuned to titles so much, except to the point where we have to convince someone to pay us more, that we're worth the senior engineer salary, and that's very important in terms of self-marketing. But in terms of our personal journey in tech, it's this never-ending journey of like trying to get better, and it's not so much like meeting other people's goals as it is trying to figure out what you really want to do, and getting as far as possible. It's a very the thing I really like is a very self-centered approach of like play games that you want to win, and not really be manipulated by other people and the structures that people set up for you. So that's kind of the line that I try to tread.
Okay. So while reading the book, I find like one chapter is like one part of it that you give, one of the advices that you gave, right? In particular, I find it interesting is like to junior developers is to like marketing yourself as a senior engineer.
Yeah.
Right. So I think a lot of us are like, I don't want to be like stereotypical like engineers, but I think quite a lot of us feel like why should we like market ourselves if we do well in our job? I think our work and our result should tell itself, right? So what do you think about it? I mean, like, if wouldn't it feel like a bit self-promoting, or like seem to be like a bit show off, like marketing yourself, that kind of thing? What's your take on that?
Sure. So first of all, the chapter is about marketing yourself in general and not about marketing yourself as a senior engineer. But I think definitely when you're looking for that promotion or you're looking to change jobs, you definitely want to market yourself as senior as possible to get the best possible position for yourself. I think why, like, you know if you do it badly, it can really seem like you're a show off. If you do it badly, you can really hurt your coworkers' feelings. And I think that's why you really need to be sensitive, and that's why I include a bunch of other principles as well, that you should treat others like they want to be treated and stuff like that. But I think it's a common developer fallacy that the best person for the job will get the job. Because if people don't really know what you can do, if you can't really be an advocate for yourself, how do you expect anyone else to advocate for you? How do you expect anyone to find you? If you write the best code in the world and nobody knows about it, does that code even exist? Um, and is this mentality of, I think, a lot of developers, especially when they try to build their own startups or their own side projects and libraries, that they're like, okay, before I do anything, I'll just put my head down and build, and then 3 months later I'll poke my head out, and it'll be this finished amazing project, and I'll present it to the world, and they will come and beat the door to beat down my door to get it, because I've invented a better mousetrap. um, this is the idea of build it and they will come, uh, and it really doesn't work. Most people figure it out after they failed a few times. So I think the main question is, do you want to feed your own ego and feel like you're the best engineer, or do you want to also have impact with whatever you're doing? And if you want to have impact, you must reach people. You must be able to communicate what you do. You must be able to inspire confidence that what you are the person for the job, or the thing that you're working on correctly solves the problem that everyone else has. So it's very much of a tool that is as legitimate as code. And if you want to ignore it, fine. But it's just a structural fact that it helps if you care about total impact rather than just succeeding by, like, just like putting your head down and building something and hoping that people will figure it out for themselves.
That sounds tangentially related to like the principles you always talk about, like learning in public, where it's kind of like you're sharing what you learned and what you have achieved so far and things like that, right? It feels quite similar. Yeah. So let's see. Sorry, this is like my first time doing interview, so
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think this is a conversation more as well, and I love to hear what you think as well. In terms of like how you have been marketing yourself, because I think you have been doing a pretty good job, as well. I'm curious, how have you been treating marketing yourself? So I kind of split it into two worlds, right? Marketing yourself at work and marketing yourself in public. And in terms of my advice on those things, obviously they're related, but sometimes for example, marketing yourself at work, you have to be a bit more sensitive. For example, you might step on your coworkers' toes if you don't really acknowledge their contributions. If you're being noisy all the time, then then you're a show off, and people will hate you for that, and rightly so. But if you don't market yourself at work, don't be surprised if you get passed over for promotion, if you're put on the wrong job, if people don't recognize the hard work that you're doing. So I'm just curious, like, to an extent that you can say this in front of your own colleagues, like, how do you sort of treat yourself marketing at work?
So I think, sorry. So I feel like at work, usually, it's, sorry, let me think a bit. how should I phrase this, right?
I just turned the interview around. No, okay. Let me. I'll give you some time before you while you think of your answer. I'll give you mine. Like, basically, what some very senior engineers out there advise people to do. Imagine, once every year you have this like annual review. I don't know. Maybe for you guys it's like every 6 months. Maybe it's every 2 years. Whatever. Um, and then when it's the annual review time, you're like, shit, what did I do the whole year? And then you have to like scramble and like figure out all these things and try to like put together some facts. And then by the time of the formal review, you have all these like kind of half collected stuff that you hopefully fits whatever OKRs and metrics that you have. Um, if you treat marketing yourself as a once a year activity, you get a once a year result. And the fact is that people actually function in a much more continuous fashion than that. Like your boss will talk about you throughout the year to their own peers, to their own bosses. And if you don't help them with the facts of the results, if you're not ready at most, at your fingertips with your own achievements, how can you expect them to be better at you than that? They have their own shit going on.
Yeah.
So what people say is, for example, keep a brag sheet. A brag sheet is like just a one pager of like, here's everything I did in the past 12 months or like my entire lifespan at the company. Here's the impact, here's the numbers, here's a link to the specific repo. Just make it easy, right? To pull all this up. And like people are shocked when I can just copy and paste and dump all this stuff because I have it ready. But because it's easy, then they remember it more. They can help me. They can be my advocate at work. And I think that's a very powerful skill because the fact is that your review doesn't just happen at your review. It actually happens all the freaking time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like the impression of people have you about it's not just built a day or like just doing reviews and read through the things, right? It's like it's being built upon like every day, all the encounters and interactions that you have. And I think about your question, right? I have to say I'm quite fortunate. I'm very fortunate, like to join the company in a much earlier stage where basically we are a smaller team, much smaller team than what we are right now. So basically back then, I think everyone knows what we have touched on and everyone kind of like intertwined with each other where we kind of know like who is working on what and who is doing and what kind of thing. But as the company grows, I find that it's harder to make your thing shine, I think, especially for the newcomers, where basically um, they they are they are more isolated in terms of like the whole big picture of the things, and I guess some people may find it hard to say um, contribute or like scared to contribute because they don't know what's happening, right? And yeah, and I find that one of the principles that you shared about is it's like a hack that I find it very useful, which is yeah, it really resonates to me, like I find it like because the last time when you were here, you talk about learn in public, which is to go to public and share what you learn and write down what you're learning about. And I think I remember like one of us during that sharing you told like was shared about he or her experience, which is like after writing a post and basically after written a post about and basically no one responded or no one really cares about, no one really reads about it, right? It's like it's kind of similar in a way where it's like you do your work and no one notices, right? and
Yeah.
and so how do you like do something that it's like definitely being picked up by someone, or like do something that kind of like has impact or like get people's attention about things, right? I mean, you can do a lot of things and you can keep a list of spreadsheet, but if no one really like look at you or take notice of you, then you never have a chance to like show it off to everyone else, right? So I find that the hack that you mentioned about pick up what they put down, right? Which is like attention. I wouldn't say like attention seeking, but it's in a
Not
good,
at all.
yeah, and it's
Not
in
at
a
all.
good intention where basically people did something and it's like, hey, oh, like you took notice of people that people that are in focus, like say maybe people pick up like what you have just done, like and what are the hot new libraries and things like that, and work on it, and like continue improving on it and things like that. I think that itself is, and then that itself will get attention, like get the attention spill over to you, and you start to learn things together with people. So what do you think of, like, how do you come up with this idea, and like I'm curious about like your experience about it, and yeah.
Yeah. I would say that everything I write is based on reflection on what worked for me and what I think I should do more of. But I'll be honest, right? Like I don't have a lot of experience in coding myself. I've only done this for 3-ish years. And I think everyone is familiar and comfortable with that fact. But so these are all like just observations, theories, whatever you call them. And I noticed that these are the most effective things that I do. So, when I just you see me, it's like try a lot of different things, and some things work much more than other things. And I think it bodes well for me and bodes well for you to think about why some things work better and why some things don't work as well, and try to do obviously more of the things that work well. And I think with regards to pick up what they put down. First of all, I think it's a very American saying. I'm not sure if like when I was in Singapore, this is a phrase that is said a lot. Um, but I think I think everybody understands the intention. Anyway, I'm still not very comfortable with it because it's 6 words long, and I want to shrink it down to 2 words. But the idea is that when you learn in public, you can put stuff out there, but don't be surprised if like people aren't interested in what you write, because your primary audience is you and all that, yada yada yada. If you are and I always say that internal drive internal motivation is more important than external extrinsic approval, likes, whatever your mentor telling you what is good or not. Like you need to make yourself happy first, because that's the only way you're going to your journey is going to last. You're going to have that internal drive. But it, like a lot of people, including myself, need external feedback to keep going. Feedback is important to us. So the way to guarantee feedback is to essentially directly address things that other people are interested in that you happen to also be interested in, right? So it's a much more it's a conversation between like what other people are working on as well as you. And the reason this works is really that people don't give enough feedback. And that's a sad fact. Like when you worked on Svelte, you saw all the to-dos in the code base. Everyone else could also see the same to-dos. They did nothing. And it's really that measure of like, do you want to do the extra step of like picking out what other people put down? And once you do that, they are almost like they're almost obliged to respond to you, because that's the contract, right? That's the social contract. But otherwise, they cannot ask. They also can't ask for help. And I think that's a much better way of mentoring. That's a much better way of like learning as well, because you're picking up something that is actively being built and created in the present. And I think that's a very powerful mechanism, lah. So like, as you I think you I try to call it on Twitter every now and then, like people picking up on like other people's work and all that, and it's very much like an improvisational style. So I think a lot of people, like, they listen with the in sorry, when they look at other people's work, they're like, how can I be better than this, or how can I they're like not even waiting. They're not even waiting for the other person to finish. They're already trying to think of like, how does this relate to me? How does this how can I start promoting my thing? Whereas I think in the improvisational style, it's very much like, okay, you said this thing, now I have to start with that and then say yes and do something else that includes that thing. And then therefore it builds this like positive chain reaction where the other person then says, okay, your thing plus my other thing, yes and yes and yes and yes and. So it's like positive spontaneous, creative process that I think makes for a very fun and creative energy that I really enjoy. So I mean, sorry, very long answer,
Yeah.
but I think I generally see this working, especially when people try it out. So I think that's really great. So this is, I guess, weaponized form of learning in public, where you really focus in on a small number of like mentors or projects that you really want to sort of get better in, and then just contribute.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you can just you can learn something like in private or yourself, or something that is not um, like on your own, then you don't get much feedback, right? And feedbacks actually are very useful for learning, because you like with like conversations going on and create like feedbacks from people, and it as you say, it's a very creative process where I think a lot of things comes out from there. Like you can gain a lot of insights and sparks, a lot of like new ideas sparks out from the conversation and the exchange, right? So I personally find it within the company as well, right? So I think in the early days, we in the as in yeah in my early days within the company, right? I of course definitely don't know everything about the project, that a lot of even okay. So let me share you the story, right? So I think early days, we are like using flow type in our code base. Sorry about that, that's great. But it's just like someone, it's just I can't remember why I picked it up that time, where like I was like trying to upgrade it to a newer version and things like that. But actually I don't know a lot of things about flow type, right, at that point of time, right? Well, I was actually still learning about it, right? But because you're actively doing something, right, and people start to look out for you for things, and uh, you have to respond, right? You have to say, oh, okay, you have this problem, and I have to figure out why, and then come back to you and explain to you. And because of all these feedbacks and conversations and things, and all the exchanges, right, I actually learn more than if I just go by myself, just read the docs and understand it, right? I think
Mm.
I can learn as much from just reading the docs, but I can learn even more by um, explain to people, and then from there, maybe people have questions that I never thought about, and then from there, it grows from there much more than just doing it alone. Yeah,
Yeah.
and right.
Well, so yeah, you really hit it on the head. I think that what I guess like my whole thing is like trying to get people to engage more,
Yeah.
and I think that's what RK, what you guys have done here is really really positive, and it makes me so much more positive on the future of tech in Singapore, to be honest, because I never saw anything like this like 4 or 5 years ago, but, uh, yeah, exactly, right. But it's not just her, because like the rest of it, you all chipped in, and everyone, people showed up, people like contributes talks and stuff every week. No, even the Americans don't do this. So you guys are doing something right, okay? And also engineers SG and the rest. Like this is really positive. One thing I wanted to sort of piggyback on what you said. Uh, and this is something I wrote in the book, which I was very proud of, but I haven't said publicly before, which is that engineers, we tend to treat code as dead objects. Like we look at the docs and it's like everything here is true, and everything, like if it's not in the docs, I'm angry, or like if the docs are wrong or outdated, I'm angry, or like uh I'll judge the library based on what it is right now, and it will never change beyond that. And if it doesn't fit my criteria now, I'm gonna write it off forever, and I'm gonna go use other things. It's not true. Like code is always in motion, and we have to participate in that motion. And I'll tell you why. We are software engineers are hired to put code in motion. So if we study code as a static dead thing that we only read source code, we only read docs, there's like dead, we only read books, that's dead, and we don't see code in motion, and we don't participate in that flow, then we're not going to be very good at our jobs where we put code in motion. So I think we really need to do more of that, participate in this like sort of this, And I tell you what, like this did not exist 10 years ago because GitHub did not exist 10 years ago. And coding was much less of a social collaborative activity. But now that it is, then there's all this like obviously non-technical parts start to come into the picture. But it is a very much of a part of how we work these days, right? So I think that's very important.
Yeah, so I think one thing to add on from here, I have to say is that I think a lot of us feel like it's a bit intimidating to like participate in conversations or engage in like discussions about libraries and tools that we are using, right? I think to myself, I think a few years ago, I would definitely think that, oh, people who contribute to React or work on toolings or whatnot is like a different level than us mortals,
Son.
right? Like it's like a god tier where we are just mortals, we are just consumers, like we don't know them. They are and maybe stereotypical like American white male that is like so much smarter than us. But after a while, I think after a while it's just like after a while you see a lot of people that actually do participate and do engage. I think like last year when uh, you were in like in a JS Conf Asia, I think when we met, feel like, oh, Shawn, he's the one who wrote the, you were back then you were the one who wrote the blog about React hooks, and I was like, wow, this must be like a god level people, and able to see him in person in flesh is like what it's like unimaginable to me, But after a while, just talking to you and like after a few exchanges, I just realized you're just like, I mean, not to belittle, but it's like
No, you're right. You're right.
you
Yeah.
can breathe mortals and just like every one of us, right? So
Yeah.
it's just so we don't have to feel a bit like distance to those kind of don't have to feel distant. Like, I think everyone can participate and everyone can be, yeah, you don't have to be like there's no qualification or like there's no like a thing that you need to pass in order to become part of like uh, the inner group or so-called to be able to contribute or exchange in open source, right? Or not just open source, but any libraries or any tools or any code that you see and use, right? Yeah. That's that's my 2 cents of it. And yeah, I think related to this also, I think you had one like repo that gets a lot of attention, right? About like React TypeScript cheat sheet. And in your book, you mentioned about open source knowledge, which is very interesting. Like I think a lot of us here knows about open source code, right? Which is code that is open source and where communities like contributing and improving, maintaining the project. But you said what happened to the code is now going to happen to knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my question is, I guess this is a fairly new concept. Maybe a lot of us, right? Open source knowledge. What does that even mean, or like what do you think it's important, and what's your take on it?
Yeah. So again, this is something I accidentally found rather than consciously like, I have a strategy to like, raise my own profile, and therefore I will execute this strategy. No, I just happened to figure it out. I mean, I just happened to, chance into it. But I think the idea is that like you said, like open source code did not used to be the norm. Everything used to be closed source, but now it's just the fact that first of all, open source code is mostly free, and second of all, more eyeballs means that it's it's got all the bugs ironed out. So everything from operating systems to databases, the open source alternative has mostly replaced the closed source alternative. And like something like, according to the NPM, like 97% of our code base is open source anyway, right? So it's only as software engineers, we only hired to write the last 3%. And so the argument is that this exact thing is happening to open source to knowledge, and that's why Wikipedia is replacing all the prior encyclopedias. But I think we should not only have one Wikipedia, we should have 1,000 different Wikipedias on all sorts of different things with different curators, different standards, different styles, because there's all different audiences. There's no one way to explain things. So I think, something that I strongly encourage is for everyone to open source their knowledge and let it be a collaborative process, because that is something that's beneficial for you and beneficial for others as well. So I think it's just like I love finding these kind of win-win situations where you can do that. Most of the time it takes the form of GitHub readmes, because there's a very there's a very well understood protocol of like, okay, you are the maintainer, other people can PR at anything at any time, they can ask questions, and so on and so forth. And for me, like I happened to find a gap where the React docs did not document TypeScript very well because they have a different type system, and then the TypeScript docs did not document React very well because that's not their priority. So I was like, okay, I can just create my own. I don't have to wait for other people to do it. I can be the person to do it. And I think when you start thinking about intersections of everything, like X plus Y, there's probably not as well documented as X alone or Y alone. And there's infinite intersections of everything. And then you multiply by audiences. Like, for mine, I was like, I already know JavaScript. The TypeScript docs are very they used to be, because they've been rewritten since. They used to be very oriented to people who did not even know ES6. So I was like, okay, this is irrelevant to me. I don't need to be taught what classes are. So like, screw all that. Let us just say, assume that I know JavaScript, assume that I know React. Give me the only additional piece of information that I need to become React and TypeScript enabled. And turns out there's a lot of people like that. and I think that's true for anything that you're learning. There's probably more people like you than you think. So just like, yeah, just collect what you know and put it out there, and like, there it's very possible that people might not jump in, but at least you have a base of knowledge that you can refer to. And I frequently refer to this as a second brain as well. Like, I always try to encourage people to build a second brain. And it's this thing of like, I don't actually need to know the details of this. I just need to know how to look it up. So if I have a system for storing all the knowledge that comes in, I don't have to hold it in my head, and I can free up my brain, my human brain, for things like creativity, writing, abstract thoughts. Whereas storage and search, definitely leave it to machines, right? Because they are very good at that. So that's very good. And then I think the other, once you're comfortable with a second brain, what Tiago Forte talks about in his Building Second Brain course is that there's actually a third brain idea, which is like all the other brains that you're connected to, right? Like, I don't need to be a Webpack god, because if I need anything done in the Webpack field, I can ping Shawn Larkin, because now he's a friend of mine. And so, like, if I have an expert in some particular topic, then I'm empowered because I can call upon them to for expertise. So I try to think about that as well, in terms of like, who are my go-to people for those areas. How can I give value to them so that when the time comes, they can give value back to me? And that is much more, all this kind of things, right, seems very fuzzy until you realize that the code that you write is actually the most brittle part of anything that you will work on in your entire career. Like, that decays the moment you write it, whereas the knowledge and the relationships will compound, which is just wonderful. Like, I know where I should spend my time.
Yeah, I think when I heard about when I see you on Twitter, I was like, wow, how can this Shawn know so many things, right? And then until I think quite a while ago, you mentioned about second brain thing, like in podcasts and in articles, you mentioned about the second brain, and I look it up and figure out like, and then I realized really we don't have to like know everything in our head, like and it like I think everyone every day once in a while you will encounter interesting stuff or bugs or features or things like that. But I think, and to be sure, after maybe 1 or 2 weeks, I think I will just forget about it, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't even remember like what are the interesting articles or components or libraries that I found I saw last week, right? So the interesting thing that you do, like, it's like when I looked up your GitHub and you have all these list of like awesome list of GitHub's repos that just curate everything, and I think it's very useful, especially like the Spark Joy, where sometimes it's like, oh, I need a really nice icon. Where should I find? maybe once in a while you definitely see newsletter talking about interesting new icons, but by the time when you need it, you probably would have forgotten about it. And having written it down like in a external storage, like your brain's external storage, like a second brain, be really useful. Yeah, and I think I really learned a lot about from there. And I
Yeah.
think, and then you mentioned about third brain, right? I guess a lot of people would think about, hey, who like who would know Shawn Larkin as a friend? Like we again, it's like mortals, like we mortals. How will we know Shawn Larkin? You know, right? He's the creator of Webpack. I mean, not
He's
creator,
not.
but yeah, sorry. He's the maintainer of he's one of the maintainer of Webpack. Like how will you know about him, right? So that would be closing a loop about where the previous principles, I think, like put down, pick up what they put down would be a very useful way to kind of like join in the discussion with people like Shawn Larkin. And that's my take. Like it would be a useful way to be engaged with them, participate in discussion. Especially there was a time I think people would like maintainer, library maintainers, once in a while they will like ask about, hey, what do you want in the Webpack 5? What are the new features and out there? And I guess through that you would form a meaningful relationship with them, and then add on to what they put down, and in return, once in future maybe they will be helpful to us. And I'm not sure
Yeah.
whether I'm like going in the right direction, but what do you think about that?
I would say that Shawn Larkin himself. You can study all of these people. They are very public about their own journey got started. And you can see the same thing happening to them. Shawn Larkin picked up what's his name, Tobias Coppers.
Yeah.
Tobias Coppers actually created Webpack, but Shawn Larkin just picked up a bunch of the community and documentation stuff, and then became more and more of a vocal advocate and wrote a lot, spoke a lot, and now he's basically the public face of Webpack. And I think the meta lesson to take away from here, even if you don't agree with a single word that I say, study the people that you look up to and see how they became successful, and try to distill lessons from that and apply it to yourself.
Mm.
And I think a lot of it also comes down to this idea of portable capital, which is something I tend to preach as well, which is not so company friendly. So unfortunately, fortunately, this is like RK is like an open conversation. But if you ever need to one day leave Shopee, uh, it is a good thing to have assets that other people can see external to your work, because otherwise the alternative is that you have to summarize everything up that you've done. Let's say you stay at Shopee for 5 years. You summarize everything up you did in 5 years, put it on a 1 to 2 page resume, and hope that someone sees and understands it. And then you maybe get an interview. You get an interview. You hope that you can convey that in 30 to 45 minutes. Uh, and it's just such a very lossy compression algorithm. Whereas if you open source knowledge, that's knowledge and assets that travel with you to wherever you go. And I think that's a very powerful, I guess, at least a backup plan, but also it just travels with you. And it's something that uh, this is a very personal story, a very personal learning of mine, because I used to work in finance, and I used to write all these like very, very detailed industry reports and stock recommendations. And that was some of the best work I ever did in my life. My boss was like, this is one of the best analysis I've ever read. Uh, Unfortunately, I will never have them ever again. That's property of my company, and that never traveled with me. When I interviewed at other hedge funds, I was not able to bring that with me, so I couldn't prove that what I said I did was good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and because I was still employed at the time, they also couldn't like call my boss and say like, hey, is this person good or not? So it's just like, if everything is closed source, then I'm sorry, you're going to go to the standard shitty hiring. Everyone knows that hiring is broken, but they don't want to do the work of having your own independent image and profile that you can rely on, so that you don't have to go through the standard hiring path. And I think it's possible. Like I wouldn't say it's for everybody, but I think it's definitely possible. And open source knowledge helps you get there with the idea that I'm also very against overnight experts. Overnight experts are this phenomenon where like someone would just like, you know, yeah, for like one day, and then they'll like write the ultimate React blog posts, and you know, it's very shallow. I'm always a proponent of being authentic with like where you're at, the amount of work that you put in, and just let people see you grow. And when they see that you can show up consistently day after day, they will love to work with you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Uh, yeah, sorry, my mind went blank for a moment. But really, I think even that is Hui Jing. I think the last time when she was here, she also shared similar stories, right? I think I don't want to. I'm not sure whether I can recall it perfectly, but I remember she was saying like that's her story as well, where she basically she want to bring out whatever she has learned within the company so far, and then put it out as a blog, and after a while just get like blogs after blogs, and people start recognize and things like that. And then yeah, I find it very interesting where, you know, a lot of times there's like a lot of times people are seeking for, you know, the secret sauce or the secret recipe to become the best, or to become better, or to turn like to change overnight. But I realized that after like studying like people out there, you know, I just realized that people actually there's no secret sauce where one secret that can fits everyone. It's more like you know, it's the same old story where you find he's just doing the same thing. He's just doing this where you don't find it very eye catching, or you know, but after day, people the day after day people will start notice, and you know, people will just uh yeah, grow from there. And I find it very uh I would say humbling, because there's no secret out there except, you know, put down your except being show up every day. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Right. So
Okay,
yeah.
so I want to push back on the idea that there's no secrets. Like, okay, there's no secret sauce. There's no magic, you know, secret that will unlock everything. But I would not say that there's no structure to how these people do. Go ahead, and which is why I very much focus on things that you've never been taught, whatever in your uni course, in your career, in your you know, on employee manuals, because nobody has incentive to teach you these things. And it's very much like, do you have any principles that you constantly live on for you know, default behavior? Do you have any strategies for deciding big sort of non-reversible decisions in your life, whether you're betting on technologies or deciding where to work, or like, you know, investing in some trends that are that you think could be beneficial for your career, and do you have tactics that you studied to perform well in certain situations, in tactical situations? And that's very much like, I kind of treat this as applications that you can install when you study these ideas. You can study principles, you can study strategies, you can study tactics. And those are, you can pull that out in those situations. Like, recognize when you're in what situation, and really like shift your mental mode to really think about like, okay, this is a strategic decision. I need to start to think about situational, like, strategic awareness. Look around me. I need to start thinking about where I am in the grand scheme of things, and really chart where I think adoption curves are, where I want to be, where my sweet spot is, and where I think this will go. I think those are all good, right? But the final chapter I end with, because I'm not very good at this, but I understand now that, let's say you have listened. Let's say I give you like a magic book that has all the best advice in the entire world with all the correct answers. I guarantee that you will not be able to implement that. And or I won't guarantee that, but I'm just saying, like, most, like 99% of us, even if we had the correct book with all the magic answers, we will not be able to implement it. And the reason we don't have that, the ability to put that in, execute that in our lives, is that our operating system is broken. Like this, imagine if you had all this like application code and you didn't have a system that ran very well. Like you constantly drop messages, you constantly like weren't able to multitask, or like you know, take care of your own you know, fundamental um, needs, like sleep and you know, posture and like health and whatever. So that's why I always like try to think about it in sort of like I had this image in my mind, which is in the book, but I can't really draw on this YouTube. But basically, like, you know, at the top is how, okay, so at the top is how others see you, at the bottom is you, right? In between, there's everything that you as a person are, that you're forming. So principles help you guide you as a human. Strategies help you guide how to guide you as in a career level, and then tactics help to guide you on a job level, like whatever job you're currently doing. But underneath all of that is this operating system which all that runs on top of, right? Like, and that's your habits, your your ability to take care of yourself and the people around you. So I think that's very important as well. Like, are you able to like consistently like fit, you know, new pieces of information, new advice into your life, and really execute upon that every day or every week or on some sort of regular basis? Because if we don't have that, then we are just constantly seeking new answers, and when we seek the new answer, we'll sit on it for a while and we'll be like, oh, it's so inspired, and then we'll tweet about it, and then we'll drop it and forget it, and we'll never ever pick up on it, and then we'll just move on to the next thing. And it's just empty calories of information that just like, it's very easy to find online, but we lack this discipline of putting it into practice. I think we really need that system to really see the full benefits.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, like even after reading your book, if you are not going to implement it, it will just like empty calories, as you say, right?
Yeah.
So as I think for people who have been listening, we have like, so Shawn mentioned about principles, right? Which is strategies and as well as tactics for all the things that are useful as a for your coding career, right? And I think so far for all of conversations has been surrounding with principles, right? I guess most of the things that we talk about are mostly principles, and I find that okay, we are approaching the end soon. So, but
yeah, we didn't even get to all of them.
yeah, we didn't get all of that, and I find that strategies are actually even more important because it's like it fits in a grand, it helps you at a bigger scheme of things, right? So so for those who, so when I was like reading the strategy part, right, I kind of reminds me of I think Jeff Bezos mentioned about decision making, right? So he mentioned about like decision making, that there's two kinds of decisions. Like one is like uh reversible decisions, right? Which is like you can do and then you can come back. And there's another kind of decisions called irreversible decisions, where basically you just go one way and you can't come back, right? So decisions that are irreversible, basically you have to make decisions methodologically, carefully and slowly, right? With great deliberation. I think he called this type 1 decision. And I think, and he mentioned that actually most of the decisions aren't like that. They are changeable and reversible, right? Which is a type 2 decision. So you don't have to live, basically you don't have to live very long you don't have to live with the consequence very long. You can just go back and redo. I think like most of the principles are like that. If you find like in public, you can try it. But if you find it not suitable or it's not optimal, then you can just go back and try another thing, right? But then there's a small part of things is more like a type 1 where it's irreversible. So you have to make like long-term strategies, which you talk about in your second, like that section of the book, right? So I think like in RK, a lot we all every week we shared about interesting things, interesting technologies, and think like especially things in the front end world, things change very fast, right? So what advice do you have for like us, in this fast changing technology sector or things like that? Like what's the advice, for like a developer that right now?
Okay, so there's a lot in there. The just a quick response to the fast changing front end thing. Yeah, there's a lot of news, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed. Like, have 90 different tabs in your browser open and you never read them. I think what you need to have is focus. Like the circle of everything that you could possibly be interested in is huge, but the circle of things that you could possibly act on is limited by the number of hours in your day. And I think, you know, it behooves you to shrink that as close as possible to your circle of concern. You should shrink your circle of concern to as close to your circle of influence as possible, and that's something that is talked about in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So that's fine. And one of the ways you do that is to have two things. One is have a mental model of where things slot in. So for example, in one of my recent talks, I gave a mental model of the React ecosystem. So I was like, these are the 6 buckets you can see things moving in, and anything that comes in, you can slot things into that bucket. If it fits something that a hole that you know already is there, then that's useful to you. If it doesn't fit something that is a hole that you need right now, then you just throw it away. And you just have a policy for dropping more things based on some heuristics. And part of that is knowing what needs you have, what missing holes that you really want or you really feel like could be done better. So Richard Feynman has this like 12 questions as idea where he like just walks around with like 12 interesting questions. Everything else that's not part of the 12, that doesn't directly answer the 12 questions that he's currently investigating, is just entertainment. He can drop it at any time because it doesn't matter compared to those 12 questions. Have an idea of what is more important to you than everything else, and don't have this perspective of like everything's important, because that's a very stressful life to lead. The second, obviously, you know, the conclusion of type 1 versus type 2, obviously, like if the decision is more reversible, then just make the decision. Don't have this paralysis of like which one is better. Like I have like trade-offs here, whatever, just pick one and go. As long as they're good enough, right? Which is also a principle. Like don't seek for the best, just seek for good enough for your needs. Okay. But the one thing I want to push you back on is that the idea that most things are type 2. And that's not true in terms of 2 scales. One is organizational scale, and the other way is time scale. I mean, it kind of varies in terms of time and in terms of organization. So let's say you are leading a team of 5 people, 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, 500 people. The higher up you go, the more influence you have, the more irreversible your decisions are, because you are setting a ship in motion that is going to take a long time to shift. And you better be freaking sure that you're taking the right shot, because you just cannot change direction that much.
Right.
And especially when it comes to hard things like launch dates, like hiring people. These are very, very multi-year long decisions that you really better have some deliberation before you make the decision. You cannot just fire and shoot like you would on a personal level. So organizational impact is something that you have to think about. And this organization may be a company, but also may be a community. So right now, I'm trying to focus more on communities as well, on building communities. Therefore, everything that I do, I have to be a little bit more deliberate, because it in fact affects communication with other people, and that communication is lossy. So I have to repeat myself. I have to continually market so that other people can figure out like what I'm trying to do, and then they can join the effort and all that kind of thing. The other scaling factor is the opposite way, in which like anything that feels irreversible, that you feel very stuck, you feel like if I make this, I'm closing the doors to so many other options. The other dimension is basically time, right? Like if you zoom out, more and more decisions become reversible with more time. And I think that as software engineers, we have the distinct advantage that it's fast moving, and that's good, because that given more time, that makes most decisions reversible, and that's much better than, let's say, we worked with hardware, where, for example, we have to integrate with like manufacturers' cycles, and you have to like okay, we're planning to ship in 2022, therefore we have to give our designs in 2020, and like there's this hard locked in schedule and all that. For software, where moving bits is much better than moving atoms, and that's something that we're blessed with as well. So if you feel stressed, zoom out. That's the rough conclusion. Like, so yeah, I mean, these things are varying based on the scale that you're looking at, like whether in terms of the organizational impact that you're doing, or like the time scale that you're working on.
Okay, that's very good advice. I think Kawi mentioned that there's questions in the chat.
Oh.
So I'm going to read it out, or
Okay.
you can read it as well. So Chris mentioned about what are some of the things that junior dev can bring to the table that they may not know about? For example, I don't know about A, and how can I bring to the table, given that they are usually less technically able.
Can you repeat the question? I don't think I got it.
Yeah. So like given that like junior developer, right, they are usually less technically able. And what do you think that they can? What are the things that you think that they can bring to the table on things that they don't know about?
So this is a whole chapter, a tactic that I call lamp shading. Um, uh, it's fine. Okay, yeah, this sorry, I'm answering your question as well. Yeah, this is a whole thing I call lamp shading, which is basically stupid questions as a service. Like, be the person who's like, I'm sorry, I don't know this, can you explain it? And as a junior employee, you are not expected to know everything. They hired you knowing that you don't know everything, and therefore it's incumbent upon the senior to really be able to explain it well. And if they don't explain it well, I'm sorry, that's on them, right? They don't know it well enough. So you can provide that the ability of like asking the stupid question, which is not that stupid lah, but I think that's a very powerful and that's a powerful career growth strategy. But then it's also powerful on a team basis, because probably you're not the only person thinking that you don't really understand something. There's a lot of miscommunication that goes on because people don't really agree on the definition or the standards that are being reached, or like the time frame or the specific action items to be done. And you need to really sort of clarify those kinds of things. As far as as a junior engineer, like the other thing that I think you can do a lot of is basically document what you learn for other people. Nobody has the time to do onboarding right. At every company I've joined, onboarding always sucks in some form, some way. The documentation is not good. Tests, and I'll come to tests, but like documentation, like procedures, like explaining like the architecture of how everything, like you as the person with like less context can have the beginner's mind and ability to explain this concept to other people, and being able to help improve onboarding is a value add to the company itself, because that means that they can grow and hire faster. In regards to tests, actually testing is contributing tests is the best way to join any code base, because you can never break the code base. In fact, you're doing the opposite. You're making it more robust. And there's never enough tests, and people always be very grateful that you're helping to understand the system. And you yourself will learn how the system works by studying the tests, and you'll probably learn something that you didn't know about the internal infrastructure, or at least some product features that you didn't see when you were just joining the company. So I think these are all like value add that junior engineers have lah. Just I think the humility to admit that you don't know everything, and the security to understand that they hire you anyway, you're fine. So yeah.
Okay, so the next one we have is, do you think luck plays a role in deciding career success?
Do I think luck?
Yeah, contribute to career success.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
But I would recommend whoever asked that, I recommend you to go and read this, Google this essay, 4 kinds of luck. And others called the luck surface area. This is a whole section of the book that I never got to write because I had to cut for time. But you can.
Would you going to have a part 2 of the book, second edition?
Next year I'll publish a second edition. Yeah. But it's this idea that like there's different kinds of luck, and as long as you expand your luck surface area, you can catch more random things that come your way. So how can you it's like what's that quote about luck is when good fortune meets the prepared mind, or something like that. Like you have to get ready for lucky things to happen to you. You know what I mean? And then you can take maximum advantage of your luck. But if you're like not even ready when lucky things happen to you, you may not even recognize it, or you may not when like the big break happens, you may not even be ready for it. And some of the readiness factor comes from having fucked up before, right? Fuck up when it doesn't matter, so that you won't fuck up when it does matter. You know what I mean? Like, so like I do intend to encourage people, like, if you don't feel comfortable public speaking now, then 10 years down the line when you're leading a team or a company, then when you're required to do public speaking, you better have all your flaws and habits worked out. So stuff like that apply to anything.
I think one of your blog posts mentioned about friend catcher has a similar things. I mean, on the other aspect where you have to increase your like luck friend surface area and luck surface area, that kind of thing. Right. I think Gao Wei had a question. How normally do teams recognize team members' contributions, and what other insights do you have about this?
How normally do teams recognize team member contributions?
Yeah.
What does
Gao
that
Wei, do
even
you
mean?
want to explain this one? Yeah.
Yeah. This is
maybe just from this conversation. I've been following up. So I think earlier on we were talking about where we want to market ourselves, and otherwise how will the annual reviews work in our favor, right? So I guess I have a question in the other direction. It might not be I mean, the three of us might not have a good idea, but I just wanted to raise this question where, how do teams normally evaluate people's contributions? Like, like in case where we day to day look at other people's code, and some people are writing really great code. How do the team leads know about this, or say is it a hard question to evaluate people properly or fairly?
Yes.
If the person is not doing anything in public, then how do we know that our evaluation is fair and respectful?
I mean, public has two levels. Like public means like really public, or public can also mean within the company, public-ish within the company. Honestly, I don't really know how to evaluate people. I tend to be on the side of like everyone has interesting things that they can bring, and as long as they're working hard, they're trying hard, I think that counts for a lot. I think obviously to a big extent, impact matters, and the ability to demonstrate that you can perform to the next level, like act for the job that you want. That matters a lot in terms of like hiring and promotion decisions. But I mean, I want to be honest, like I haven't been in a hiring, like I've been in a hiring committee, but I haven't been a hiring manager myself, so I don't know.
I was overall I was intending to have maybe some team lead to be able to comment on that, but I think
yeah, you should ask the team lead. I'm not a team lead.
Do you have a different interview session next time with team leads?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say like, there's a whole question about like, do you want to become an engineering manager or not? I think in the US, this is a much better explored topic. I'm curious how it's different here in Asia. I suspect it's very different.
Yeah. Okay. Hi guys. Okay. So thank you all for the really good topics that they've brought up. I know that we have not gone through a huge chunk of it. Like we are just touching the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, but I think because we are already over 7, and yeah, and I think we still have a lot more questions. Maybe we would have a part 2 as suggested by some. Yeah, so for those listeners out there, because it sounds more like a podcast. Like if you really like this kind of sessions, do let us know, and we'll try to make it happen. Yeah, so thank you all for the really good questions. But before we end off, do you guys have any closing statements that you guys would like to leave for the audience?
Is it me? I think I'm just very encouraged by RK. I think I'm amazed that everyone here shows up and participates and actively ask questions and all that. Whenever someone in your company in this sessions, or at least online on the internet, whoever you look up to, when they put something out, try to pick up what they put down, and then write up your learnings and share it in public, and really try to build that career for yourself. I think that no one is as invested in your career as yourself, and it's really upon you. Like no one's looking out for you. You know, you got to do this for yourself. And I think a lot of us are like sleepy in a sense that like we just expect that our employers will take care of us, and they will not. Like we are ultimately responsible for our lives, our careers. And so I hope like you don't have to agree with me on anything except for this, that you should take your career into your own hands.
And add on to what Shawn has said, and also Ken has shared, this is just part of a tip of the iceberg. And for those who are interested to know like what are the things that is out there in the book, you can. I'm not sure whether anyone see the chat, because maybe you're just listening, but we share the link. 50% off coupon. Is that right?
Yeah, just for friends. I don't want to share it like widely in public, but I think everyone here, at least I'm friends of RK. Like I'm happy to share a discount.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you're interested, if you are here, most likely you're interested in listening to what Shawn has to say. And I think 1 hour is a very, very short time for Shawn to share his experience.
Sorry.
So yeah, so I think you can find like a whole wealth of experience also inside his book. Yeah, so thank you both for joining us, for being the interviewer and the interviewee, and
thanks.
speaking to the audience about it. So yeah, I think that's all we have for today. So thank you again, and
bye-bye.
Okay, bye everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks for organizing as well.